the way he act, the first time I heard his voice, I was like, wait, that's not the Sylvester Stallone. That wasn't that wasn't the voice. That's not what I heard.
Soundstripe.
Welcome in to another episode of Blockbusters, a classic movie podcast where if you're like us and you miss the days of packed movie theaters and movie stores, then this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Caleb Suggs. Joining me is Ernie Ferguson.
You try to be nice to people. That's the most ironic quote of the movie right there from Teasel, or I can't remember his name.
Teasel, yeah,
that's
the
right,
sheriff,
that's right.
Teasel.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, no Dakota this week. He got caught up at work and
Real life kicked in.
Yep, and he is stuck in a ditch right now doing some work. So we don't envy him one bit.
No, not at all. He does a great job of what he's doing, and it's a job that neither one of us want to have any part of. And so when y'all finance us and all three of us can quit our normal jobs, I know that's happening in like 2060, but we can have a pipe dream.
What will your age be in 2060?
Dead. I'd be 80, mid 80s. There, I can't do the math, but yeah, mid 80s.
I got to do this math now. 86.
86. There you go.
I don't know. You're a spry young guy. I think you could make it.
Yeah. Do you think I'm opinionated now? Man, when I have somewhat of a filter here.
I would love to see what movies we would be doing by 2060. If there's anything left.
I'll tell you what, I don't know. I haven't. It's sad. I enjoy this because there's not a lot of movies that I'm like geeked up to go see. It's just that's the sad thing because I love sitting in the movies. I love getting. You can't tell me how good movie popcorn is in real life, but when I go there, movie popcorn is like fantastic. I mean, drown it in butter, and I didn't have like 100 packs of napkins with me. There's nothing better than movie popcorn, and then that cost you like $900 to get.
Yeah, I think this year especially, I felt like was a slow movie year, and I don't know if that was because of. I know they had the writer's strike at one point last year, the year before. I can't remember when, so I don't know. But superhero movies are kind of dying out a little bit. Comic book movies, so for a while there, you were getting one of those a month. So now those are kind of dying out a bit. So Hollywood's kind of trying to figure out what their next thing is because obviously they don't do original stuff anymore. So
okay. So we take a movie like First Blood.
Speaking of which, where our movie today is the 1982 American action film First Blood, or as some people may know it, Rambo. I think
as the kids call it.
Because I meant when I turned it on to watch it yesterday, my wife was like, "What's this?" And I was like, and she's like, "I never heard of this." And I was like, "It's Rambo." And she said, "It didn't say Rambo in the title." I'm like, "Yeah, the first one wasn't called Rambo," but to people that to some people they probably call it Rambo First Blood, but the actual title is First Blood. So that's what we're doing this week. But continue, Ernie.
But yeah, you look at a movie like this. I mean, it'd be out in a week, and maybe it won't last very long.
No,
one, it's too politically charged. I don't think that, and then also I don't think the action would hold up to this day because people want body counts, people want maiming, mangling, and things of that. Well, I mean, just look at the Rambo franchise, and you can see what happened to it also. And like you said earlier, original ideas. Not saying that First Blood's original because it's not. It's based on a book, but just anything. It's sequels. It's carbon copies. It's hard to find anything original that comes out that's worthy of putting the house down payment on a house to go watch it in a movie theater.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we probably share some blame for that because I think for a long time, original movies might come out and people just didn't go see it, and so Hollywood looks at this and like, well, if they're not going to do original, they're going to do what people go see, so we share some blame for that. But
Oh,
yeah,
100%, because I guarantee you those Avenger movies, the Ferguson, my daughter and I, we were there, over and over and over again but, that's also I was a comic book guy too,
yeah,
and we've talked about that before, I enjoyed the comics but the problem is then it became less about story and just about pumping them out, and again, it goes back kind of like to the Rambo series. It became less about the story, because there is such a huge difference. Well, I guess we can talk about that now. You look at Rocky and Rambo, both Stallone movies, both, with him lead. Those two movies are the beginning of a franchise, and they don't resemble anything else in the franchise. Nothing else. I mean, you talk the plight of a human, whatever they're going through, of Rocky Balboa and John Rambo, and then once you get to the sequels, it's about bigger, brighter, louder, and it loses the humanity that people loved about those two characters are completely lost in the sequels.
yeah, I think you look. Yeah, it's just some people, the Rocky franchise. Yeah, well, I like the later Rocky movies more, but maybe that's just because the way I was as a kid. But no, I think definitely when you look at First Blood, I mean, this like you said, it's politically charged, and I think I forgot as I started to watch this, I forgot how mad I get watching this
Mm,
movie because and I wasn't around during this time, but just like knowing the way these veterans were treated, coming home and look, I get it. Vietnam, it was a very controversial, a heavily controversial political time, and I get people being mad about being involved and all the stuff, and I'm not going to get into all the history of that, but you know, uh, these soldiers were just doing their job. They were doing what they were. Well, most of them were drafted to do. I mean, thank goodness they got rid of the draft and they became volunteer. But I mean, most of these guys were, drafted out of high school, going over there, and they're just doing what they're told to do. And you come home and they get treated like that. I mean, that's tough. And it's just like the song "Born in the USA." It's one of my favorite songs of all time, but it's also probably the most misinterpreted song of all time. I mean, it's
100%.
people think it's patriotic, but it's just more about the treatment of Vietnam veterans, and it was rough. And as soon as this movie clicked on, and you get that first interaction with Stallone and crap, what's the Denny
Delmars. Oh,
Denny
Dennehy, okay, that part,
Dennehy's
yeah.
character, the sheriff. As soon as you get that first interaction with them two, and he's like, walking around here with that flag on your chest, you're asking for trouble, and I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
That again, that's one of the things this is the Vietnam War. Well, just looking at this, I mean, we see it today about how some of our veterans are treated just by the system. And, about what they've talked about how, just the health system of the VA and things like that. But now we're talking about there's like systemic failure for the Vietnam vets because, as you said, I mean, it was a war that nobody wanted. It was a war that I mean, we got people that were drafted, so the people that weren't want to be there, and so they were at a war doing what job that they told. They come back home. Now you have the culture in the country failing them because they're looking at them, how absolutely awful that they are. They're blaming the people who went out and fought, you know, for all the things that happened. I mean, it goes back really well with what Troutman said. God didn't make Rambo, I did. And again, all these soldiers that are doing these things. Go back to my education roots. One of the discussions that we've always talked about was is man naturally evil or are they naturally good? And you can kind of see that whenever you go to war, you have some people who I it's like a duck to water. This is a killing machine, or becoming a machine instead of being a human, and it's unfortunate, but that's what I mean. Like you can see Rambo through this whole entire movie fight it, fight it, fight it, fight to try not to be what he was in Vietnam. Even whenever the one sheriff fell out of the helicopter, the one that who was the biggest jerk of them all, when he picked him up off the ground and he was looking at him eye to eye, you know, I, I think that was more of a look of I didn't want this to happen. This is not what I wanted to happen. Now this is going to lead to stuff that's going to lead me to become something that I don't want to be.
Well, First Blood is a 1982 American action film directed by Ted Kotcheff and co-written by Sylvester Stallone, who stars as a Vietnam War veteran John Rambo. It also co-stars Richard Crenna as Rambo's mentor Sam Troutman and Brian Dennehy as Sheriff Will Teasel. It is the first installment in the Rambo franchise and is based on the 1972 novel First Blood by David Morrell, which many directors and studios had successfully attempted to adapt in the 1970s. It was released October 22nd, 1982. It grossed $125.2 million on a budget of just $15 million, and the film's success spawned a franchise consisting of 4 sequels, co-written by and starring Stallone, an animated television series, a comic book series, a novel series, and several video games. Ernie, you got the Rotten Tomato score?
It's 86 and 86. So 86 from Rotten Tomatoes and 86 from the audience
Wow.
too. So it was we don't see that very often where it's like
No.
right on top of each other. The weird thing is listening to the different people that were, you know, possibly because they tried to put this in the production or the rights to this book. First Blood was bought, I want to say in '73. So from '73 to '82, they tried, I want to say about 4 different times to create this movie, but like the names for Rambo, like the right before I think Rambo, but right before, excuse me, right before Stallone took it over, John Travolta's name was mentioned, like Chris Christopherson's name was mentioned, De Niro was mentioned, different people like that. Clint Eastwood, I think early on in the mid '70s, early '70s, Eastwood's name was mentioned. So there are a whole bunch of different names, and then the ones that I really find interesting was for Dennehy's part, for Teagle, was Gene Hackman, for that part. Because again, Gene Hackman, he plays a butthole really well.
Mhm.
I mean, he really does. And and one for Troutman that I really like. I don't know if you've ever seen Dirty Dozen, but Lee Marvin as that role for Troutman. Which again, how Crenna got that job? It was supposed to be Kirk Douglas, but Kirk Douglas kind of played old school Hollywood and he wanted all the lines. He wanted it to be more about him. He wanted the film to end with him killing Rambo and killing the sheriff and riding out with Rambo's headband on his head as he drove out. And so he and Stallone kind of got in an argument, and so they said, "See you later." So this was the day before production started. So, they get the actor in for Troutman. He comes in and like the day before, I want to say his first scene, they had people telling him what to say because he didn't have enough time to memorize. And so, again, movie magic that you have there.
Well, I'm gonna assume that you didn't go see this in theaters. So, do you have like any memories of seeing it for the first time?
No, this is one of those ones that again, I thought it was a lot bloodier than what it was. Again, memories. Again, I think I watched it. I didn't watch it at the Ferguson household. I know that. So I watched it probably on VHS or maybe cable somewhere. But the 2 things I remember. Well, a couple things I remember distinctly. One, the guy that got hit by all the spikes in the legs. I was like, yeah, ouch. I remember that. The rats.
The legs.
Yeah,
It's just the legs.
yeah, the lower stomach area, the upper thigh area probably too. He's probably singing soprano the rest of his life. Uh, but the rat scene, again, Sylvester Stallone really got bit by rats in that. So, I'm like, okay, I know you people love your craft and your trade, but you're going way over the top. But then the the 2 visuals is the huge machine gun that he's just sitting there blowing up the whole entire town with. That's one, and then the knife.
Hmm.
I mean, I had a toy knife that was plastic that you could screw the bottom out of, and I was waiting for him to MacGyver it and pull out a tube sock out of there and a chainsaw and who knows what else out of that. But that knife was very. I mean, that sold a lot of knives at that time.
I try to remember just going. Hey, we found something on the web. I try to go back in my head and remember the first time I saw this, but I couldn't tell you because this is one of those like growing up. You know, we've talked about it before, and I told you this week I was born in the wrong decade. So growing up, I watched a lot of '80s action films, and chief among them were Stallone movies. And so Rocky and Rambo. I had the Rocky collection and I had the Rambo collection on VHS and DVD. So there's no telling how many times I've seen these movies. So I really couldn't remember uh, going back and watching this for the first time. But it is funny going back and watching it as an adult because as a kid, and I'm sure a lot of people, you remember the Rambo from the sequels, the super beefed up and the oil on his chest to make it look sweaty and like the bandolier, what you get in this one, but it's
Yeah,
not. It's taken to another level, and and it's more about the explosions and stuff. And so to go back and see the more grounded first one, it's always fun.
and the acting from Stallone.
Yes.
Uh, you know, that's the one thing about Stallone is he has acting chops, unlike Schwarzenegger. So again, what you're talking about this point in time, you have Schwarzenegger and Stallone that are about to go head to head with each other as far as who's the top grossing action guy, and Stallone again. I bring back Rocky again, and I bring back, and then you get Rocky and Rambo. But I mean, the way he act, the first time I heard his voice, I was like, wait, that's not the Sylvester Stallone. That wasn't that wasn't the voice. That's not what I heard. And it was just his facial expressions too, because and that's one of the things when we talk about this, you can see the point when something clicks in Rambo when he's talking to Delmore Berry's mom, because the intro of the movie, Stallone's smiling. He's smiling. He's coming down this road, and kids don't run away from some strange dude, and he comes up to the mom and was talking to the mom and was talking about all the good memories that he had with her son. And then when she says that he dies of, because of Agent Orange and that he was wasting away, that's where you could see, and this is the last time we also see Sunshine too in this movie. And you just see the expression change. I was like, "Oh, okay, I see you, Stallone. I see you can act a little bit here, And that's one of those things where it truly one, like I said, the voice, but his acting. That's and the interactions between him and Dennehy also. Which again, who would on your bingo card? Did you ever have Brian Dennehy back to back movies? I don't think we ever would have thought that.
you know, hey, expect the unexpected, especially with Ernie Ferguson on the podcast, right?
Exactly.
Well, in the early 1980s, John Rambo, a Vietnam War veteran traveling on foot, arrives in Hope, Washington after discovering an old war buddy died from the effects of Agent Orange. The local sheriff, Will Teasel, assuming Rambo is a drifter, transports him to the outskirts of town, telling him to move on. Rambo reverses course back into town, resulting in his arrest. While being processed at the police station, Rambo becomes defiant, and Teasel's deputies, led by the sadistic Chief Deputy Art Galt, abuses him, triggering flashbacks of the torture which Rambo endured in Vietnam. So we've already. I mean, you just talked about him meeting with the mom, of his and all that. So we've already kind of touched on a lot that happens in the first scene. But man, you get into that town. I mean, it's straight into it. There's really not like anything that Rambo does. I mean, he's just walking and he's like, "Hey, I'll give you a lift out of town." I mean, he doesn't even the sheriff doesn't even let him get into town. I mean,
Well, I
he
mean,
did.
what's the first thing that the sheriff says to one of the guys in his own town? Tells him like he needs to take a bath or get clean. Teagles, he wants people clean. I mean, again, the first guy he talks about, you need to take a bath or something like that. But that, and that's one of those things where again, if there is a nitpick about the movie, I mean, have Rambo look a little scruffier. I mean, because he didn't look that bad. But now again, I understand the long hair and all that kind of stuff. But this goes kind of the question that again, just listen to different people talk is, you know, was Teagle a good sheriff? Not what his decision. How does his town view him? Because you look at the town is clean, the people were saying hi, generally looked friendly, but then you look at the people that he had working for him, like the one guy that fell out of the helicopter. You can't tell me that guy didn't do some of this stuff to other people too.
I I think there is a man. This movie is not black and white. I don't think
No.
you can look at it in any sort of black and white because I mean Rambo's supposed to be the hero and the sheriff are the villains, and yes they mistreat him and obviously, but I mean at the same time he's doing things that like you can't allow as a police officer, and I mean and I don't like the way that they treat veterans, but at the same time I mean he's just trying to protect his town the way he sees it, and so I mean it's tough. I think watching the movie. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, I think you're going to look at it like I look at it and like the way that these people are treating veterans is just not right. But at the same time, trying to look at it through their lens, it's tough. And but man, I think when you get Galt in this, that's when it really like. Teasel's one thing, but you get Galt. That's when you're like, okay, that man's a jerk. Like, especially just the way that he would say, "Oh, we got us a soldier boy." Like just the way he would say that, just like it makes you like irk. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think Teasel 100% believed what he was doing was absolutely right for his town and for his people until it was too late to where then it became about pride. Then
Mhm.
it became about saving face. That's where it also becomes about Galt too a little bit. Even though I think he knew he gave Rambo to Galt because he knew something was going to happen. That way, he can also walk away and be, I'm not doing it. Galt's doing it, which this is also for the first time that I can think of where the for us nowadays to see police brutality, it's not new.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it's not new. But in the early Reagan era, in the early '80s, and you see the police like this, it's one of those things where you're like, again, it's a culture shock because also when you look at this too, this is a different way to look at a Vietnam vet too. Because again, right off the bat, I mean, you're watching this movie. This guy's not doing anything wrong. You can kind of understand Teasel's perspective, of trying to keep the town clean and moving on and stuff like that. But you get to the point where in this movie, both men had a chance to walk away at the bridge. Both of them did. Rambo could have kept on going. Teasel could have kind of let him come back in. He could have taken him somewhere, but neither one of them was going to back down. I mean, this is Teasel's town. He's going to be again. He thinks it's 100%. I am going to protect this town. I'm going to keep it clean. I'm going to keep it neat. I don't need vagrants. I don't need anybody wandering the street. Rambo's like, I'm tired of being because again, he said he's 7 years out of Vietnam. How often has he been treated like this over and over and over again? He just found out the one person left from his family from Vietnam, that platoon. He just found out that he died, and he's tired of it. He's tired of it. He wants to be treated as a human. That's why the speech at the end again goes back to Stallone's acting chops there, was very, very powerful, in this, and you get the police just the way other than David Caruso's character, Mitchell, I think what his name is. I mean, every single one of them were just looking down on him, and I'm sorry, you bring a straight razor at me too. I had a barber use that once on me on purpose, and I was still shaking in my boots because that made me nervous, much less some gun happy Washington cop doing it.
Yeah, and I think not only all of that, but you look at you start getting when he's in the police station, you start getting the flashbacks, and that's kind
Mm,
of the interior message in the movie. It's not just he's a Vietnam vet. The cop is mistreating Vietnam vets. You start seeing where he's back from Vietnam, he's back from the war, but he's still fighting the war at home. He's still, he still has the PTSD and stuff, all the stuff that soldiers unfortunately deal with, and so it's all that coming together. It's not like he feels like he's being mistreated, so he just does these things. I mean, these things are bringing up something in him, and the only thing he knows how to do is survive. Which Troutman brings into it. Talks about later in the movie. All he knows how to survive. All he knows is how to, his instincts, and so that's what you start getting that, here in this scene. So Rambo finally fights his way out of the sheriff's station, regains his confiscated knife, and flees into the woods. Teasel organizes a search party with rifles, dogs, and a helicopter. Galt blatantly disregards Teasel's orders and attempts to shoot Rambo dead from the helicopter with a sniper rifle. Rambo throws a rock at the helicopter, causing the pilot to briefly lose control. Galt loses his balance and falls to his death on the jagged rocks in a gorge below. Rambo tries to surrender to Teasel, reasoning that Galt's death was an accident and that he wants no more trouble, but the deputies shoot at him and Rambo flees. Although Teasel discovers Rambo is a Green Beret warrior and a Medal of Honor recipient, he continues his pursuit. So this is part, you were talking about it a minute ago. So we kind of see, they go on this little search party. First, we get a pretty cool chase scene on the motorcycle. I was kind of surprised that Teasel kept up with him as long as he did on the terrain that
Yeah.
they were going. I feel like that car would have gone kaput a little bit longer before it did. But you get the scene with Galt in the helicopter, and Teasel's telling him to spot him. Just spot him and tell us where he's at. And then he starts shooting at him. And then you get the chopper. The helicopter pilot's like, "What are you doing?" And he's telling him to just fly the helicopter. And then you get Teasel screaming over the radio, "What's going on?" And so at that point, your Teasel's kind of like, obviously he's mistreated Rambo, but he's still, he's trying to do things by the book, whatever. And then, Rambo throws the rock, Galt falls to his death, even though, again, it's not Rambo's fault.
Yeah.
At this point, it's when it changes. Now Teasel's got to get this guy.
Yeah. Which, this whole entire time, at this point in time when we have Galt's death, they still don't know what they're dealing with. And that's the thing. One, I thought they did a good job in the police station of the PTSD scenes where it's flashes. It's not, you're not taking a whole chunk of the movie doing these flashbacks. It's just enough that okay, I mean, they tortured him. They were literally throwing feces on him. They were doing all this other kind of stuff. And, then uh, I think one of the guys, after he broke out and he was running down the hallway, one of the guy hit in the nose that you see with the bandage over his nose, Stone really did hit him on the nose and got that, but then he starts taking I thought it was funny was when he got on the motorcycle, they see him when he's turning, he's popping a wheelie. I'm like, is that the fastest way to get away from somebody is popping a wheelie? I was like,
He popped about 3 or 4 wheelies in that chase, and I'm like, does that make it? I've never rode a motorcycle. It's like, does that make it go faster?
that's what I was thinking. In my non-mathematical mind, two wheels on the ground seem to be a lot faster than one on the ground. But I'm not a motorcycle rider. I could be wrong. But one thing about the movie industry that makes it so much different is in that chase scene, uh, Teasel's car catches the stuntman that catches too much air, and the shocks were out, and when it landed, that stuntman broke his back.
Oof.
Uh, so again, you're talking about ugh, and that's kind of rough. But also, they talked about originally before all the cuts, this movie was 3 hours and like 3.5 hours, 3 hours 45 minutes, and this chase scene was like 40 minutes. I'm like,
Good lord.
yeah, and so that's what makes and that's one of those things they were talking about, like some inconsistencies with the movie making, like at the end, like when he comes in the town, it's night. Whenever and there's only some shooting. Then when they take him out of the police station, it's daylight. Well, again, you don't have the time where it's not the time frame where you digitally alter the backgrounds, but so there is a lot of constraints, which again is still kind of when we talked about this with Alien, we talked about this with Halloween, it even Star Wars, just what you're able to do with the limited stuff that you have. And I think there's so much a crutch on CGI, that you lose some of the creativity. Like it's really fascinating to see that. But to go back to, if this guy's supposed to be the greatest soldier ever, you know, how did he drive up the start driving up the cliff on the motorcycle, and the motorcycle kind of flips out from under? I'm like, come on, man. I mean, and also you have all this time. I mean, Teasel and his crew, I'll tell you what, they may have seemed like Barney Fife throughout this movie, but the one thing they were good at was organizing and catching up with them. I mean, they were real good at that. I mean, again, for a bunch, well, also these local yokels had a whole bunch of firepower too. I've never seen a local sheriff's department in 1982 be absolutely loaded that they were. Um, but the fall. Can we talk about the fall
Yeah,
that
I wrote it down in my notes. I was like, I just wrote that had to hurt. Like,
yes,
even no matter how they did it stunt wise, just watching it, like, oh, that.
that's and when they landed on the tree, one, I was like, "That's stupid," but I'm like, "Okay, that actually makes sense." Because if you're trying to escape, you don't just jump in that water. One, you'll die. You just don't jump. Well, you take your chances with the branches, and again, we talk about stunts. They said that Stallone did the bottom third of the tree himself, and he broke his rib whenever he did that too. So I'm thinking, okay, if he just did the bottom third of the tree and broke his rib, I mean, we talk about not going one in a superhero movie. This is the time where John Rambo turns into a superhero, real fast. But but again, you have this. He's trying not. He's When he broke out of the jails. Even this time, even with Galt, he's not trying to kill people. Which is a big difference from the book. The book this is based on, there is body counts. I mean, like Galt gets shot with a gun, and one in the leaving the police station, Rambo like guts a guy, and so that is the big difference between this, because John Rambo gets humanized, you know, and we are all going, why don't you just let him leave? I mean, you feel the sympathy, and that goes from the very beginning. There is sympathy for Rambo, and if Rambo built up the body count, you're not gonna have sympathy for Rambo. You know?
Yeah. Well, using guerrilla tactics, Rambo subdues all the deputies. With the deputies incapacitated by injury, Rambo quarters Teasel, holds a knife to his throat, and threatens a war Teasel won't believe if he does not give up the pursuit before retreating further into the woods. The Washington State Patrol and Washington National Guard are dispatched to assist Teasel, along with Rambo's mentor and former commanding officer Colonel Sam Troutman. Troutman advises Teasel that if he desists, Rambo will move on and can be arrested elsewhere without incident, but Teasel refuses. Troutman initiates radio contact with Rambo to persuade him to surrender, but Rambo refuses, condemning Teasel and his deputies for their abuse and citing that they drew first blood. So it's at this point, so we've just learned that Rambo, I mean, he's not just some soldier. He's a Green Beret. He's a Medal of Honor recipient. He's the soldier. So this is when you start to get it. The whole guerrilla warfare thing, just the way
Mm,
he takes them out. I mean, this is where you learn. Okay, this guy means business, and he does it. Like you said in the book. I mean, it's different in the book, but in this movie, he does it without. It's not mortal injuries. So
no.
he knows what he's doing. He's not trying to kill, but I mean, he's at war now in his head, and man, the traps he sets. Oh God, we talked about it already, but that Spike's trap is just,
Mm.
oh man, that
And that's
had.
the thing. He does it in all different ways. He comes from the below. He comes from above. He comes from behind. He sneaks attack. Just the whole entire prep of this, getting into this. And I thought it was funny. I think it was the redhead guy again. I'm sorry,
Mitch.
Mitchell, Mitch.
He's
Yeah, go ahead and say it. I
he,
mean,
he he's not. We're not hunting him. He's hunting us. Yeah, another great quote from this
yeah.
movie.
I mean, and that goes. And here's another thing that this movie wouldn't be able to be made nowadays, because the body count in this movie was three: one accidental death of a human and two dogs. The only thing that Rambo killed were the two dogs that were coming after him. So again, he still has the sanctity for human life. He still hasn't turned into, you know, the monster that it seems like he is fighting the whole entire movie. But again, as far as scene wise, the hunting in the jungle scene, where I don't care how unrealistic it is. I don't care how he's standing up, lightning strikes, and they see him and he shoots and he dodges the bullet, and the other guy gets shot. I don't care. Just the way that was set up. Again, because you didn't need excess blood. You didn't need all that kind of stuff. Just the different ways that I mean, he what hamstring Mitch. He got the guy with the spikes. He ended up garroting one guy to the tree almost.
And
Just
he does all this with very little time too.
yes.
So again, I mean, we're literally you're literally creating the legend of Rambo in this scene, just with the way
Mhm.
how quickly he's able to do this and everything he's able to do. And then we get the part where he gets Teasel at knife point, and I mentioned to this before we went on the show, but Stallone, the king of movie poster quotes, told him that in town, Teasel's the law, but out here it's him. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and then you get Dennehy though. I mean, Dennehy has been barrel chested. He has been barking fire. Then Rambo pops up, and Dennehy he drops the gun, and he's almost sniveling. I mean, and again, because this is, I mean, yes, he's worried about his life, but this also hits his pride too, because he thought that, yeah, this is just a drifter. I can take care of this, no problem. But then, boom, he pops out. This again.
you
Dennehy is great in this movie.
you see the uh kind of the reality come over him and just in this hunting scene, because at the time, they're all together, they're hunting, then he starts picking them off one by one, and you get they're screaming, and then at the point, Will Teasel's kind of looking around because they're all screaming at him, and he's like, and it's kind of like all
Mm.
around him, but nobody sees where he is, so it's like that reality is like, what that force, like, what am I up against? And so you see that in him, and then that fear starts to creep in. uh,
Yeah, the voice is screaming "Will, Will, Will" all over the place. That was powerful there.
Well, at the entrance of an abandoned mine, a National Guard detachment corners Rambo. Ignoring Teasel's instructions to wait for his arrival, the guardsmen fire a rocket launcher, collapsing the mine entrance and seemingly killing Rambo. Teasel furiously berates the guardsmen for disobeying his orders and demands that their leader, Clinton Morgan, dig out Rambo's body. However, Rambo survives the attack, where he escapes the mine through a ventilation shaft, hijacks a military truck carrying an M60 machine gun and ammunition, and returns to Hope to cause as much damage as possible in revenge. So we kind of skipped over
Mm.
the introduction of Sam Troutman, which is a huge part of this movie, because he's come in, and so you get kind of the character of Rambo, the legend, and the actions that he does in the hunting part, but then Troutman comes in with his speeches, God didn't make Rambo, I made Rambo, and just kind of talking through about. I mean, he's basically telling him. I mean, he's like, this. You've picked a fight with the literal last person in this country that you want to pick a fight with, and he does a great job just painting a mental picture of what kind of soldier this is.
And you get, I mean, and then, but you get Teasel who's sitting there. He just had a knife to his throat by the guy, and he's telling the state guard, he's like, I'm taking care of this. I don't care about the state patrol. So this is, I don't care about your jurisdiction. This is my guy. Despite having this knife put to his throat, and then yeah, Troutman came from DC, so he made it from Washington to Washington in less than a day. That's pretty impressive for Troutman. But you know, watching Troutman this whole entire movie, the man was enjoying this. You could look at him and he's looking back. He's going, "Hey, this is my boy. This. Look at this is what I did." So all you idiots are, this just, it's crazy. And then I you guarantee you, he's seeing the Washington National Guard who has a freaking bazooka, and I mean, what I don't want to be said I got to be at the drugstore in the morning. These guys are again weekend. I mean, Teasel put it perfectly. Weekend warriors, guy again. They're just coming out there and they're just loading on that mine shaft. Just how much rounds do we have? And all of them are just unloading it. It's like cowboys. I mean, even when they thought they blew it up, what is that? Pass the cigars.
Yeah, and I think a very underrated part of this movie. Well, first off, so we get the whole thing with Rambo in the mine. Uh, the rat scene. absolutely terrifies me all the time because I
Agree.
absolutely hate rats with a passion. But the most underrated part of this movie to me is this whole mine chef scene. And I say that because they could have easily just, oh, he disappeared deep into it and he found a cave and he got out. Like it could have been just a simple thing. But for the fact that, I mean, this whole scene, you kind of follow him to it and you seeing him making, fire on his bandana or ripping off his clothes and just going through different things. You see, again, we're talking about that military training that he has, and you see it later when Teasel finds out he's alive. He's like, you knew he was still alive. You knew he could get out of that mine because that's what you trained him to do. So again, you're just building more and more the legend of Rambo in a scene that you could have easily just done pretty quickly and nobody would have thought anything different. But it's just those
Yeah.
little things that add to the character.
Yeah, which goes again to the shortness of this movie, an hour and a half, and this is, I mean, it's flying by, and there's action, and again, it's it's action with purpose. It's not just like action just so let's see how many different ways we can blow up a body type of thing. There is purpose for everything that they have Rambo doing, you know? And that's the one thing that I thought was fascinating about this too. Now for me, the the tunnels or whatever, the mine shaft, I was like, well, why didn't he just go in there and just start disappearing anyways instead of just that was one of those things where I had the skeptical Ernie has to like be put in my back pocket and say, "You're watching a movie, idiot. Stop doing that. Stop sitting there and being like half these people going, well, ooh, he looks twice, can't find gasoline, then ooh, the third thing he picked up is gas, that's one of those things where I have to physically tell myself enjoy the movie and stop trying to nitpick all the small little things with it. That's but it's I still every time the National Guard, and I know I said it before, every time they come up, I giggle. I just laugh about them because again, they're like, "You go in there and check it." I'm not going up there. He'd kill us. It truly is like somebody like, "Hey, this guy's the real deal. I'm not doing that."
You missed the part where they're walking up to the forest and you hear one of them like, "Is he armed?" Like they don't even know what they're hunting. And by the way, again, we're talking if we're going to talk about little nitpicks and stuff where we have to suspend our belief. You're telling me there was like 50 of them. You're telling me not a single one of them saw him clinging to these rocks. The water can't be that deep from where it
Right.
was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he also well, I mean, also to go back to Super Rambo, I mean, when the sheriff's deputies all started unloading their weapons and he got grazed in the head. Yeah, okay. So he got one of those Forrest Gump $1 million wounds right there. They just grazed his head instead of I mean, all those guys are shooting bullets at him. They can't hit him when he's telling them, I didn't do anything wrong, but
And I guess
again, I'm still trying to figure out who gives the National Guard a bazooka or the big, huge gun that they were returning towards the end of the movie.
yeah,
I
this
mean,
they brought a lot of firepower out for one man. Now, again, I understand we're building the legend of who this one man is, but at the same time, you're like, this is one man. So, but also, we probably need to go back in the whole radio talk between Troutman and
mm,
Rambo. I mean, that's important too. And again, you get these little things where you're just seeing it with Rambo. I mean, he's at war. I mean, he's never really came back home from war, and you're getting it in that talk that he's having where he's talking about nobody's left. It's just me. And I'm just kind of I'm doing what they drew first blood. It's great. See, this is probably. And we're going to get into it a little bit later when we get to the best part as far as Stallone's acting. But this is probably, if looking back, maybe the best acted movie Stallone has all the way through.
yeah. Whenever you get whenever he says they drew first blood, the second time when he says it, and his eyes are just kind of looking off, and his voice is drifting out. Again, he's being brought back to Vietnam, the person he was in Vietnam. And it's something that at the very beginning of the movie, when he was smiling, just walking, that obviously he was trying to stow away and trying to put away, but they just wouldn't. The people wouldn't let him. He couldn't be John Rambo. Every time people saw him, he was that guy that fought in Vietnam and did all those things, and they wouldn't let him be they wouldn't let him like wash cars or whatever the job that they were saying that he wanted to be able to do. Which also, looking at before we get the Teasel Troutman mixer meetup, the cute meet there, we get the reporter. And see if this sounds familiar, where the reporter is just detailing everything from, the perspective of the police and not necessarily the true details, which again, I guess also this is one of those things where one of the big things that came out of history lesson, Nixon, the 70s, and Vietnam is that distrust of government, distrust of even the media a little bit too, which has gone even crazier nowadays, But that's one of those things. You have this reporter who's on the scene, and we have watched what's happened, you know, and what he's saying isn't what happened, you know. And so I thought that was very poignant, especially for nowadays.
I'm still trying to figure out how the reporter got that much information. I'm sure, surely I wouldn't think the cop would give that much information out right there, just while they're trying to. But maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I try to spin it to make yourself look good, because just because you wouldn't let this guy get something to eat.
That's true. Well, in an effort to distract the authorities, Rambo blows up a gas station, cuts power to most of the town, destroys a sporting goods store, and shoots the sheriff's station. Troutman, understanding that Teasel is outmatched, again tries to convince Teasel to leave Rambo. Teasel, seeing Rambo's rampage as a personal attack, ignores Troutman's orders again and tries to hunt for Rambo on the station's roof, but Rambo manages to shoot and injure Teasel in a gunfight. So again, this is kind of where you're getting to the point to where Rambo's not just a guy that's trying to get away or trying. I mean, now he's kind of out for revenge, and he's not killing anybody, so it's not like. But I mean, he's doing some serious damage.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes into the story that he talks about, like the little kid with the box or whatever, and the blew up pieces of his friends in Nam, in Nam, and not Vietnam,
Bam.
in Nam, I mean, so he's like, okay, well, I have to go scorched earth. And so, so I steal a military van, you know, and that, that's the weird thing. Again, here's goes those nitpicks. He steals the truck, the army truck. He runs through the blockade, and nobody follows him from the blockade. He just toodles into town, kind of like Michael Myers in a mask in a loony bin car too, that nobody just pays attention to. you know. But he's got this big, huge gun, which again cause a distraction, blow up the gas station, and that way you can go to the police station, and just the the tension that's brought up for Teasel. He goes to the roof, and he just sees different parts of the town blow up, and he's pacing back and forth to different parts of the roof. That just that's one of those things where that built up the tension pretty good, because you knew eventually was gonna happen, because Teasel didn't have a chance, and that's one thing we've seen this whole entire thing. Teasel has thought he had the upper hand this whole entire time, and it's taken him this long to figure out. Oh, I think I may have messed with the wrong guy. And my question, I guess, too, is talked about earlier about how Teasel 100% believed in what he was doing. So my question would be, at the end of this movie, did Teasel still believe in 100% in what he was doing? Not what he would admit to, but did he still think that he was doing the right thing?
Uh, I was looking back at my notes, going back to what you said about the police giving information to the media to get their side of the story. It did crack me up when in the quote he said something about the police officers suffered an injury, and he's like, only through their superior training did they make it
Yes.
out. Did they make it out alive? But I'm kind of mad that Dakota's not here because he's our resident firearm specialist. But that scene where he shoots Teasel through the roof, like, is that plausible? I
With that heavy duty again,
yeah, I get it's
that's a heavy duty because you and I are such gun fanatics that we know what we're talking about. All I know is that's a big stinking gun and it's got some big stinking bullets, and I bet you that's a government built building, so you know it's low bid. So you know it probably
yeah,
is possible for that to
yeah.
come up there.
You made good points. So when Rambo prepares to kill Teasel, Troutman appears and warns Rambo that he will be killed unless he
I'll tell you
surrenders.
what, Troutman, that man is a magician. You know, he's like ninja dust, poof, and he's all of a sudden he's just there. You know, I mean, he showed up at the perfect time with Teasel out there with the state patrol. Now all of a sudden he's about to kill Teasel, and poof, I'm here. Hello, I'm here again. You know, he's got
Well,
hey, that
uh,
guy's a ninja.
I mean, if Rambo's this good, and this is the guy that taught Rambo, look, man,
Fair point.
just what I'm
Fair
saying.
point. I teach you everything. I taught you everything you know, but I didn't teach you everything I know. You know,
Troutman appears and warns Rambo that he will be killed unless he surrenders, reminding him that he is the last survivor of his outfit. Rambo vents about the horrors of war and his traumatic experiences, like watching his friends give their lives in Vietnam, being treated poorly when returning home, being unable to hold a job, and being forgotten despite his sacrifices. Rambo breaks down crying as he recounts how a good friend was killed by a Viet Cong child soldier using a shoe shiner box wired with explosives. After being comforted by a visibly disturbed Troutman, Rambo surrenders and is taken into federal custody, while Teasel is taken to a waiting ambulance for transport to a hospital. So we've done mentioned this multiple times, but this is without a doubt, in my opinion, the best that Sylvester Stallone has ever acted. And that's not saying that Stallone doesn't act very well, because he can at times.
he
Now,
can,
obviously,
yes.
yeah. But this scene right here, just the story he tells, and you just see the emotion kind of building up over as he's getting more and more into the story and talking about the things that he's going to, from everything from getting back from the plane and being spit on to he can't hold down a job, and then the story with his friend, and he's got this crying in his voice where he's talking about
Hmm.
I can't find your legs, something like that. I mean, and then I'm really glad that they mentioned how a visibly disturbed Troutman, because you're talking about, I mean, he's not doing anything, but you see it in his face. You just see it, like he's so disturbed by everything that is happening. I mean, this scene alone makes the movie.
You know, I don't think Troutman was there to keep him from killing Teasel. I think Troutman was there to keep him from killing Teasel and then himself.
So okay, so I'm gonna interrupt you there. So it's funny that you say that, because there is actually an alternate ending
Hmm.
where Rambo. Well, so the way it is, I think it's been a long time since I've seen the alternate ending. So this is spoiler alert in case you have not seen it. But
From 1982.
well, I mean, it's an alternate ending. I don't really know
That's
that
true.
a lot of people know that there is an alternate ending. But so it's like Troutman is holding the gun, and he's like Rambo's. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but the way I remember, Rambo's like trying to get him to kill him, and then Troutman's holding the gun, and then Rambo tries to grab the gun, and Troutman pulls something like. But anyways, Rambo does die in the alternate ending. So it's funny that you say that, because there is that alternate ending of that.
And you know, but if you wanted this to be truly a dark movie, it would make sense if Rambo killed himself, you know, or went out suicide by police type of thing,
Yeah.
which or you know easily could have gotten could I mean there was nobody around, you know, whenever he got Teasel. I mean Rambo could have gotten away and gone in the mountains for a while. That was plausible too, you know, but you see Troutman again, this is where you see that care, the love that Troutman has for his boys, and just how gut wrenching it was, like you said, for Stallone, in just the memories. And again, this is, you know, I don't think we've ever seen. I mean, you had Apocalypse Now when you're talking about Vietnam stuff, which is just weird. Period. You know, but this is I don't know how many Vietnam movies that you have where you're truly looking at the PTSD stuff. You're really looking at how much this has screwed people up and how much we don't pay attention to it, how much they're overlooked at, how much looked down to, how much they're spit on, how much, that us as a society, and this is, I mean, especially the Vietnam vets, but that's just not that. That's all our vets, how much we take them for granted and how much they go through because of what they've seen, you know?
Yeah, there's probably not anybody I respect more in the world than veterans because the sacrifices they make for us is to, I mean, and just the thing, this is a movie. So I mean, we're probably not even really talking about some of the stuff that these guys are going through, especially these vets back in this time period. So just to see a glimpse of what it is that they might be dealing with, I mean, it makes you really sit and think.
I think about myself because when I was a senior in high school, that's when we go into the Persian Gulf. Uh, the first time we go in there in Operation Kuwaiti Freedom, I think it's, or Desert Storm is what it was. And I remember just being like, "Heck yeah, let's go!" Because it's on CNN. You're seeing all these missiles get shot off, and we go in there, wipe them out, and go, "Yeah, the war is great." Then from after 9/11, I worked in Killeen, Texas, which is where it's not Fort Hood anymore, but it used to be Fort Hood, which is the largest U.S. military institution in the United States. And I saw what people getting sent to war did to their kids. Um, I saw kids whose parents died. I saw parents that on the closed circuit TV got to watch their kids graduate. They were in Baghdad and we were in Texas and got to watch them graduate. I had one player who played for me whose dad re-enlisted. He was a mechanic. When he was in Iraq, they were hooking up a car to a tow truck, and one of the cars fell on him and crushed him, and he passed away, and he died there. And then the year later, his brother-in-law was a helicopter pilot. They were in a sandstorm, didn't see power lines. That went down, and his brother-in-law died. So in 2 years, in less than a year's time, he lost his father and his brother-in-law. And so that's one of those things where I look down upon myself because I can remember how it felt in high school, beating my chest, USA, USA, because again, we were going to war and we were beating people up, which, because again, there was no face for me to put with the military, and then you see stuff like this, you see somebody like John Rambo who, my goodness, we can't even fathom what the people in Vietnam, that's why the people from Vietnam won't talk about Vietnam. It is truly heartbreaking to see that, and that's why I think that makes this it's a testament to this movie that in 1982 they touched on these issues and didn't just make this out to be some truly crazy, military guy. Because as I've said it before, you can see Rambo fighting this the whole entire movie. He didn't want to become this. He didn't want to do this. He tried everything in his power not to become what he was in Vietnam until it took Troutman to literally talk him off this edge, and he just busts. He just breaks down, because who else is going to listen to him? I mean, because you're talking about in the early '80s, men don't cry, men don't go crazy, men don't do things like this. So who are you going to talk to? I mean, the people you want to talk to, one, they don't give a crap about the veterans from the Vietnam. Two, the guys that went over there surely don't want to talk about it. John Rambo, the people that he lived this experience with, they were all dead, so he had nobody to talk to about it. And it's just, again, this makes this movie even more gut wrenching the more and more that I think about it.
Yeah, and it's crazy to look at this and then think about the Rambo movies that we got to come. And I'm not gonna sit here and act like I didn't enjoy the other Rambo movies, but because I did, and I'll still go back, and they're fun little '80s action popcorn flicks to go watch. But I mean, the character we get in Rambo 2 and Rambo 3, and that's obviously, and then on, is just so much different than this one. And it makes me glad that we got this movie first. It's not, they didn't just start with some, muscled out guy, causing a bunch of damage. There's an actual meaning behind this movie, and even though I enjoy the other Rambo movies, I'm always going to be glad that this one came first.
The other Rambo movies are action movies.
Yes.
First Blood is a drama with action.
Yeah.
Just again, the way it's played, again, the way the two guys, Dennehy and Stallone, the way they played this, it's a drama because you got to think Dennehy's probably military, so that means he probably served in the Korean War. So now what you get is that idea of the old military guys looking at these Vietnam guys and saying, "Well, it's your fault that we lost the war. I don't know why you can't straighten up. I mean, look what we did in Korea," type of thing. So you have that. Yeah, again, I don't know if Dennehy's. I don't know if Teasel was. I think in the book he was a Korean War guy, but again, I don't know about in the movie if that translates over. But someone the way that Teasel acts, he's got to be a military guy. He probably served in Korea. So again, there you have that underlying aspect of the people you think should be supporting you in the military aren't supporting you also. And that's again a tough swallow. Which again, I don't know. I guess I'm a stand for Dennehy. Uh, I loved him in Silverado, and I loved him in this too. He
Uh,
plays a good sheriff. That's not necessarily a good guy.
yeah, he played with two straight movies with basically the same character, a little different there, but all right, I guess that brings to an end our reviewing part
Hey,
of.
I do have a prequel for you, a Troutman prequel. You think Hitler killed himself? Uh-uh. Troutman got him. That's what it was. Troutman went behind enemy lines. He beat the Soviets to Hitler, and he made Hitler look like a suicide. That was Troutman.
Dude, how
100% prequel. Go with
I
it.
mean,
Hollywood, hit me up.
this is 40 years after the end of World War II. I don't even know if timeline you could make. Because I mean, what's he about? What 50 in this movie? I would say Troutman.
Oh, shoot, I don't know. I mean, what you're talking about? Okay, so Hitler dies in what 44? No,
Five.
45. 45.
It's 19. This is 1982. So I mean, Troutman looks like he's in his 50s. I would
If
say.
he's 18 years old,
So you're saying a fresh
58-year-old,
a
58. Hey, Troutman taught everything. Hey, look what he did with. Hey, I'm saying,
All right, so we've gone
he
from
possesses a certain amount of skills. You know,
so we've gone from Nino Brown as Blade to Troutman killed Hitler.
heck yeah.
All right, so moving on to our rankings part of the podcast. Again, unfortunately, Dakota is not with us tonight. He's perfectly fine. He's just working. The way I said that, like
Yeah.
something bad happened to
No,
him.
no,
Oh,
life just happened. That's all that happened to him.
one time when I was working at a newspaper, the first newspaper I worked at, someone came in asking for our publisher, who wasn't our publisher anymore. He had become the mayor. He had ran for mayor and became mayor. And someone came in asking for it, and I was like, "Oh, he's no longer with us."
Golly, that's rough. By the
So,
way, Richard Crenna would have been 19 at the end of World War II.
all right, well,
Something to think about right there.
there you go.
Troutman prequel coming, baby.
Again, we don't do original stuff in Hollywood, so First Blood.
Exactly.
What would you call it? Zero Blood or for
Free blood?
pre blood?
How to draw blood? I don't know.
All right.
Oh goodness.
All right. So going to the rankings.
This is why we need Dakota, by the way.
Well, speaking of Dakota, since he's not here, I will go ahead and give his ranking. He says he gives it an 8. He did not tell me why, so we're just gonna go. We're gonna keep that straight. Which granted, I didn't ask him why. I just asked what his ranking was, so that might be why he didn't tell me.
Probably because he was working. That's unfortunately.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I guess since it's my pick, I don't even think we mentioned that, but this was my pick. I guess I will go first. And man, I went. I think I went. I went all around the map on this one. I really wasn't sure what to rank it. I look at it. The meaning of this movie, and just again, we've spent so much time talking about it, so it's not like we have to go into huge detail about it. But just the meaning of the movie and the message and just everything that you see, it adds a lot. I think an 8 that Dakota gives is not a bad score, because I mean, this is a good movie. Is it Is it something just amazing? It depends on. I guess it depends on your certain point of view. So I consider it a 9, but I don't think I want to go that high. But I do think I'll give it. I'm going to split the difference and go 8.5.
Again, it's another one of those things that surprises me with just watching this because again, in my mind, it was just an action movie, but the surprise of one, Stallone's normal voice, at the beginning of the movie, and also his acting chops that showed off. It wasn't just it wasn't just guttural grunts. There was true acting, and the whole spirit behind the movie itself, it was truly humanizing a person that is a lethal weapon, and so I was really pleasantly surprised with this. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. Again, it still has some moments where, again, most movies have, that's like, I don't know. So I am gonna go 8.5 also.
All right, so 8.5 from me, 8.5 from you, and an 8 from Dakota. That brings us out to an 8.33 repeating. Ernie, where does that land us on our list?
That ties First Blood with Batman at 11. So it's right below Scream and Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I got to fix my spreadsheet, and it's right above Friday Night Lights. So again, First Blood is at tied at 11.
And if you would like to see our full rankings, we are excited to announce that we now have a website. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ernie, it is podpage.com/classic blockbusters. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so podpage.com/classic blockbusters. So that's our new website. You can go and check that out. It'll have our for right now, it has our rankings. It'll have our episodes, and it has a little bit more. Hopefully, we'll be able to add more to that, as we get further.
Once we figure it out.
But right now, we got the episode on the website. So that's the win for us. Now we'll see you. We'll see you next year after the
Yeah, that's right.
holidays.
Yeah, we creep at a slow pace with the stuff that we do. So
I'm also happy to say that we went over 500 episodes with our last episode. So I'm really excited about that. Again, we said it, I don't know how many times, probably every episode, but that may not seem like a lot, but 521 episodes is more than we thought we'd have at this point. So we feel really happy
yeah.
for everybody that listens. And Dakota has told me Dakota's pick is the next episode. He's not here to tell us himself, so he has told me it will be Goodfellas. So we're
Goodfellas. Somebody had some influence there, I think.
I did what? I did not. I
It's,
wasn't even.
it's about to go off Max. You better get it while you can.
That's just he admit we had mentioned Goodfellas, and I was on HBO Max.
He wanted a De Niro movie though, So yeah.
I just mentioned that it says on Max that it's in the last chance category, which means it's going to be leaving soon. I just mentioned that. I didn't make him pick that. But yes, so Goodfellas is our next movie. That'll be our first gangster movie. We're breaking all kind of first. We did our first Stallone
What are
movie.
you talking about? New Jack City's a gangster movie. What are you talking about?
Right.
Nino Brown is Blade,
I'm sorry.
baby.
I'm sorry.
And by the way, you mentioned Nino Brown being Blade before I did. You're just trying to nip it in the bud before I get to it.
That's that's your thing. That's become your new catchphrase. Maybe eventually, if we start doing merch, we'll put it on a shirt.
Heck yes. That's what we're talking about.
So, all right. So, 8.3 repeating for First Blood puts it at 11 on our list. Again, please visit our new website, podpage.com/classic blockbusters. You can also find us on Facebook. Blockbusters, a classic movie podcast, and you can find that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Ernie, do you have anything to add?
No, we had a good time. Miss Dakota, we'll look forward to having him next week, and we thank you for watching. For eventually, yeah, you may be able to watch us too. Don't know why you'd want to, but thank you for tuning in. Keep on sending some love our direction. We appreciate you, and we'll see you at the movies.